Loner rancher was digging his own grave. Then 8 lost orphan girls appeared out of nowhere. Ethan Callahan paused, leaning on his shovel. The sun burned overhead, a merciless Texas hammer beating down on his sweat-soaked shirt. Red dirt clung to his skin like old blood. His breath came ragged, chest heaving. The wind whispered across the prairie, carrying the bitter tang of dust and heat. All around him lay emptiness. No neighbors for miles. No cattle anymore. Nothing left but rattlesnakes and the memories he couldn't drown. And at the edge of the grave, half buried in shadow, lay the wooden cross he'd carved himself the night before. He'd scratched the words with a pocket knife until his fingers bled. Here rests a man who gave up. No name, because there wasn't anyone left to remember it. Ethan lifted the shovel again, muscles trembling, dirt crumbling from the blade. He was ready for the next scoop, the next inch closer to putting himself in this God-forsaken ground for good. That's when he heard it, a rustle, soft like dry leaves brushing one another. A flicker of movement caught his eye. A shadow stretched across the grave's edge. He froze. The shovel hung midair. His eyes squinted against the sun's glare. His heartbeat thudded in his ears, drowning out the wind. Another rustle, another shadow, then another, and another, until 8 small silhouettes stood in a ragged line, framed by the burning white sky. At first, he thought he was hallucinating. Heat stroke, guilt, 3 years of loneliness, finally snapping the last thread of his mind. But they were real. 8 girls, young, dirty, half wild. Their dresses hung in tatters. Their skin was stained with sweat and grime. Hair tangled, lips cracked. The oldest couldn't have been more than 15. The youngest barely 5. Ethan felt the world tilt under his boots. For 3 years, not a single soul had stepped foot on his ranch. Not even the mailman. The tallest girl took a step forward. She looked straight into Ethan's eyes with a fierceness that didn't belong on a child's face. "Sir," she said, her voice trembling even as she tried to hold it steady. "We need your help." A hot wind blew a curtain of dust across the grave, stinging Ethan's eyes. He blinked. The girls were still there. "Hell are you talking about?" he barked, his voice hoarse from disuse. "Who the hell are you kids?" The girl swallowed, her chin lifting stubbornly, despite the way her hands clenched into fists. "My name's Clara Reynolds. These are my sisters." Ethan let his gaze sweep across the others. Some stared at him wide-eyed. Others hugged each other like they were trying to hide inside each other's skin. The littlest one, a tiny girl with a sunburned nose, clutched a ragged teddy bear missing one button eye. Her name, as Ethan would later learn, was Emily. He shifted his weight, suddenly conscious of how ridiculous he looked, standing in a half-finished grave, sweat dripping from his hair. "Where the hell did you come from?" he demanded. Clara hesitated. Her eyes darted back across the shimmering horizon. "Nowhere," she whispered. "Everywhere." The youngest girl whimpered, pressing closer to Clara. The others drew in tighter around her, like a school of minnows hiding from a shark. Ethan scanned the desert behind them. Nothing but sun-baked sand and ragged scrub for miles. The nearest town was 15 miles east, across a desert that could kill a grown man without a second thought. The idea that 8 children could cross it alone was insanity. "No," he said flatly, gripping his shovel as if it were a weapon. "Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying. You kids need to move along." Clara's jaw trembled, but her eyes stayed locked on his. "Please," she said softly, "don't send us back." And then Ethan heard it, a distant drumming of hooves, faint but growing louder. A dust cloud shimmered low on the horizon like a heat mirage. Someone was coming, fast. Clara's face turned the color of bleached bone. She glanced at Ethan, then at the approaching dust. "They found us!" Ethan felt a chill ripple through him, despite the sun pounding overhead. He didn't know who they were, or why 8 terrified girls would be running across a desert to his doorstep. But for the first time in 3 years, he felt something in his chest that wasn't emptiness. Trouble was coming, and it had just found him, knee-deep in his own grave. A hush fell over the yard, as if the desert itself were holding its breath. Ethan Callahan climbed out of the grave, dirt sliding from his boots. His legs were unsteady. The girls scattered back a step as he towered over them, taller and broader than any man they'd probably ever seen. But their eyes never left him, especially Clara's. Somewhere out there, a faint drumbeat of hooves still pounded against the hard-pan earth. Closer now, as steady as a ticking clock counting down to trouble. Ethan swung his gaze from Clara to the youngest girl huddled beside her, Emily. She was shaking so hard the one-eyed teddy bear in her arms rattled like a sack of bones. He tried to keep his voice hard. "Who's coming, Clara?" She licked her lips, chapped and cracked, and stared toward the horizon. "Men," she said. "From the orphanage." Ethan felt the sun beating down on the back of his neck, hot enough to blister skin. He dropped his shovel into the dirt. "Orphanage? Nearest one's in Cold Creek, 15 miles through desert. How'd you get here?" "We walked." Ethan barked a humorless laugh. "Through that dust bowl? In those shoes? For 2 days?" Clara just nodded. Her dark hair blew across her face in the hot wind. No water, no shade, no mercy. He stared at her, at the dark rings under her eyes, the raw patches on her arms where the sun had eaten the skin away. Then he let his eyes roam over the others. Hannah, 14, with a split lip and hair stiff with dried sweat. Sophie, 13, clutching a torn scrap of cloth like it might keep her safe. Megan, 12, face pinched, eyes darting everywhere for danger. Ruth, Leah, Abigail, and tiny Emily, all pressed together like a single creature with 8 beating hearts. Every one of them looked half dead, but it was Clara who spoke with the voice of someone much older than 15. "We can't go back." "Why not?" Ethan demanded. Clara's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed low and even. "They'll kill us if we do." The word "kill" seemed to echo off the dry walls of the house, drifting up into the white-hot sky. "Your children," Ethan snapped. "Why would anyone want to kill children?" Clara took a trembling breath. "Because we saw something we shouldn't have." Behind her, Emily whimpered. The girl tried to bury her face against Clara's arm, but Clara gently pushed her forward. "Tell him, Emily." Emily's tiny voice was barely more than a squeak. "We saw Mr. Mercer hurt Miss Sullivan." The name Mercer sent a ripple through Ethan's chest. Silas Mercer. Everybody in 3 counties knew that name. Owned half the businesses, paid off judges, deputies, anyone who'd take his money. "Hurt her how?" Ethan rasped. Emily blinked, eyes wide and shiny. She was screaming. Then she wasn't. A chill sliced through Ethan, cold and sharp as a knife. Clara stepped closer, her eyes blazing. Miss Sullivan came to ask about the missing kids. She had papers, names. She said she was going to tell the governor. Mr. Mercer caught her in the basement. We saw him." Her voice cracked. She bit it off like she couldn't bear to finish. "And you think he'd kill you for that?" Ethan pressed. Clara's jaw tightened. "We don't think. We know. They're already looking for us. And if they find us, they'll make us disappear too." Somewhere behind Ethan, a faint sound hissed through the desert, the whisper of brush being crushed under hooves. He turned and saw the dust cloud growing thicker, swirling like a tornado's tail. Emily gave a small, terrified cry. "They're coming!" Ethan's instincts screamed at him to send these kids away, to keep himself clear of whatever trouble was rolling over that horizon. He wasn't fit to protect anyone anymore. Not after losing his own wife and son. Not after spending 3 years drowning in whiskey and silence. But he looked at Clara, at the fierce, trembling way she stood her ground, at Emily, clutching that broken bear like it could ward off death. And something cracked open in him, a feeling he thought he'd buried 6 feet deep. "You can't stay here," he muttered. "This is my land. I don't want no visitors, especially ones bringing killers down on my head." Clara stared at him, unblinking. We didn't have anywhere else to go. Another rumble of hooves rolled across the desert floor. Dust billowed higher, thick enough to hide whatever was coming. But Ethan glimpsed flashes of metal, rifle barrels catching the sun. "How many men?" he asked. "Don't know. Lots." Clara swallowed. "Deputy Brandt's with them. He's Mercer's man." "Brandt," Ethan whispered. "Law's supposed to protect kids like you." Clara's eyes went cold. "Not when Mercer pays them more than the law does." Ethan stared into the dust. The drum of hoofbeats quickened, like war drums. He wanted to pick up his shovel, finish digging, and just lie down in the hole. Let the sun bury him. But instead he found himself whispering, "Follow me." Clara blinked. "Where?" "Root cellar, now." And as the first dark shapes appeared at the edge of the dust cloud, Ethan Callahan turned his back on his grave and ran. The desert hummed with the throb of approaching hooves as Ethan Callahan pushed open the old wooden doors of his root cellar. A rush of cold, earth-smelling air spilled up from the darkness below. "Get in," he hissed. The girls crowded close, wide-eyed and breathless. Clara was last to climb down, her hair brushing Ethan's arm as she descended into the shadows. For a moment, he could smell the sun-baked dust clinging to her clothes. He shut the doors, dragged 2 feed sacks over the seams, and stood up, breathless. The hoofbeats were loud now. Dust curled around the house in dirty brown spirals. And then they arrived. 4 riders, horses slick with sweat, pulled up in a cloud of grit and sunlight. Their leader swung off his horse, dusting off a tan deputy's badge pinned to his vest. Deputy Lucas Brandt. Brandt was a handsome man, but the kind of handsome that left you feeling cold. His hair was slicked back, eyes pale and sharp as broken glass. His gun belt hung low on his hips, casual, confident, like he'd never had to draw in a hurry. "Afternoon, Callahan." His voice dripped with an oil-smooth charm that made Ethan's skin crawl. "Deputy." Ethan kept his tone flat. Brandt flashed a grin full of perfect white teeth. "Heard you've got visitors out here. 8 girls, to be exact." Ethan's jaw tightened. He crossed his arms over his chest, feeling the lingering ache in his shoulders from digging his own grave not 20 minutes ago. "Don't know what you're talking about." Brandt stepped closer, boots grinding in the dust. 8 girls, ages 5 to 15, runaways from the Mercer Children's Home. Ethan spat into the dirt. Hell of a long ride to be looking for kids. Brandt tilted his head, studying him like a hawk might study a wounded rabbit. "These ain't just kids, Ethan. They're witnesses to something that never should have been seen." "Witnesses to what?" Ethan demanded. One of the riders shifted in his saddle, about to speak, but Brandt shot him a look sharp enough to slice bone. The man snapped his mouth shut. Brandt's grin widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Law business, Ethan. Best you stay out of it." "Since when does the law chase little girls halfway across the desert?" Ethan fired back. Brandt's smile flickered. "Since those girls started spreading stories that could ruin good men. Important men." Ethan felt the heat throb in his temples. Images flashed through his mind. Clara's trembling voice, Emily's tiny whisper. Mighty strange that the law wants witnesses silenced instead of protected. Brandt clucked his tongue, as though he pitied Ethan. Now that's the kind of talk that gets folks in trouble. He leaned forward until Ethan could smell the faint whiff of expensive cologne under the desert sweat. "You'd be wise to cooperate. This doesn't concern you." "It does now," Ethan said. Brandt's pale eyes flicked toward the house. "Big place for a man all alone. Suits me fine." "Gets lonely out here," Brandt said softly. "Men get funny ideas, like harboring fugitives, or digging graves for things better left buried." The last word slid into the air like a knife under ribs. Ethan felt his fingers curl into fists. Brandt motioned to his men. "Search the property." 3 riders dismounted, moving in a slow, methodical circle around the ranch. They peered into rain barrels, pushed open the chicken coop, and stomped through the brittle grass beside the fence line. One of them paused at the charred edge of Ethan's half-finished grave and poked the dirt with his boot. "What's this?" Ethan stared him down. "Dead cow, died of colic." Brandt gave a soft laugh, humorless. "Funny place to bury livestock. So close to the house." "Funny thing to question a man about on his own land," Ethan shot back. The deputy raised his eyebrows, eyes glinting with an unspoken threat. "Folks who don't cooperate with the law sometimes find themselves facing charges. Trespass, resisting an officer, harboring criminals." "You threatening me?" Ethan said, voice low. "Just stating facts." Brandt adjusted the brim of his hat. "And facts are, you got something or someone hiding here." Ethan didn't move. The wind whipped around them, hot as dragon's breath. Somewhere a lizard scurried across the dry ground. Brandt stepped closer again. "Tell me where the girls are. You'll sleep in your own bed tonight. Refuse, and your next bed's iron bars." Ethan stared into those pale eyes. "I already dug my grave once today. Guess I'm ready to use it if I have to." Brant's expression twisted. The grin died on his face, leaving only something cold and reptilian behind. "Those girls are carrying stolen property. You know that." "Stolen property?" Ethan scoffed. "They're kids." Brant's gaze hardened to flint. "They took something that belongs to Mr. Mercer. And if you've got it, you're an accessory to theft, among other things." Ethan's blood iced over. The journal. Brant leaned closer, voice dropping to a near whisper. "This is bigger than you, Ethan. Walk away." "I ain't the walking away kind," Ethan growled. A flicker of frustration flashed across Brant's face. He signaled his men. One by one, they returned from their search, shaking their heads. "No sign of anyone," one reported. Brant clenched his jaw, looking like he'd just bitten down on a scorpion. "Fine, but don't get comfortable. We'll be back. And next time, we'll tear this place down to the nails." He swung up into his saddle, glaring down at Ethan. "Those girls can't hide forever. And when we find them, we'll remember who helped and who didn't." With a flick of the reins, he wheeled his horse around. The other riders followed, kicking up a spiral of dust that hung in the air like a warning. Ethan watched them go until the last hoofbeat faded into silence. Only then did he exhale. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the cellar door. He lifted it just enough to see Clara's face staring up at him, pale and tight with fear. "Are they gone?" she whispered. "For now," Ethan said, "but they'll be back. And next time, they'll come with more men." Night fell like a curtain of black velvet, swallowing the ranch in shadows. But there was no peace in the dark. Inside the house, Ethan Callahan stood at the kitchen table, staring down at the 8 girls. A single lantern burned low, throwing trembling golden light across a dirt-smudged faces. Steam rose from tin bowls of beans and cornbread. The girls barely touched it. Their eyes darted to the windows every time a board creaked in the wind. Ethan's voice rumbled low. "Eat. You'll need your strength." Clara pushed her bowl away. "We can't stay. You're going to get killed because of us." "Already planned on dying today," Ethan said. "Might as well die for something worth the trouble." Clara lifted her eyes, shining wet. "You don't owe us anything." "I know," Ethan said, "but sometimes you do the right thing, even if you ain't got to." A hush fell. Somewhere outside, the desert wind whispered secrets through the dry grass. Clara reached into the torn fabric of her dress. She pulled out the small leather journal and set it on the table. "This is why they're after us." Ethan's big hand hovered over it before he picked it up. He flipped open the cover and began to read. Names, numbers, destinations. Children's names crossed out in neat, precise ink. Payments recorded for each transfer. Some sums so big they made Ethan's breath catch. Places were listed: Cold Creek, San Antonio, even cities far across the border. A chill rippled up his spine as he realized what he was holding. A ledger of human lives. "Jesus," Ethan whispered. Clara's voice cracked. Miss Sullivan was writing it all down. She was going to give it to the governor. Mr. Mercer found out. He killed her." "And you saw it," Ethan murmured. Clara nodded. "That's why they're hunting us. As long as we're alive, someone might believe what Miss Sullivan tried to tell." Ethan closed the book and slid it back to her. "Hide this. Never let anyone see it unless you know they can be trusted." Clara tucked it away again. Outside, the wind shifted. Then came the sound of a horse. A single distant whinny, followed by another and another. Ethan stiffened. He crossed to the window and peered into the dark. Torchlight. A line of flickering orange dots bobbed toward the ranch house, like fireflies but far more dangerous. "Damn it," Ethan growled. Clara's voice was sharp and frightened. "It's them!" Ethan grabbed his shotgun from beside the door. "Get to the cellar, now!" Clara caught his arm. "You can't fight them all. I ain't letting them take you. They'll kill you. I'd rather die shooting than die digging my own grave." Outside, 15 mounted men gathered. Their leader, Deputy Brant, sat on his horse, face aglow in the torchlight. His pale eyes glittered like chips of ice. "Callahan," Brant's voice carried over the yard. "Last chance. Hand 'em over, or burn with 'em." Ethan stepped onto the porch. The shotgun glinted in his hands. "Go to hell." Brant gave a small, humorless smile. "Your choice." He gave a flick of his wrist. Torches flew. Flames erupted along the edge of the roof, running across the shingles like wildfire on dry grass. Ethan grabbed a lantern and yanked the cork from a bottle of kerosene. He splashed it across the kitchen floor. "Stay low," he snapped to the girls. "What are you doing?" Clara cried. "Even the odds." He struck a match and held it to a rag, watching it bloom into a thin blue flame. "When I say run, run north. Don't look back." He tossed the burning rag into the pool of kerosene. Boom! The kitchen exploded in fire and shattering wood. The blast blew out the back wall of the house. Brant's men fell back, shielding themselves from the heat. Ethan stumbled through the smoke, dragging his sleeve across his bloody forehead. He raised his shotgun and fired. One of Brant's men toppled off his horse, screaming. "Spread out!" Brant roared. "Don't let him get away!" Clara coughed in the smoke, eyes watering. The other girls were huddled against the cellar door. "Ethan!" Clara screamed. But he was gone, out in the yard fighting. Fire clawed up the walls of the ranch house. Sparks drifted into the sky like tiny shooting stars. Ethan darted between shadows, taking shots at any man who tried to approach the house. "He's only one man," Brant yelled. "Rush him!" 3 men broke from cover, running toward Ethan's position. He dropped one with his shotgun, then swung the butt into another man's face, sending him sprawling. The 3rd man tackled Ethan to the ground. They rolled in the dirt, fists flying. Ethan managed to grab the man's revolver and crack him across the skull. Down below, the girls clung to each other. Emily's small voice quavered. "Is he dead?" Clara shook her head fiercely. "Not Ethan Callahan." Ethan staggered to his feet. Blood trickled down the side of his face. Flames roared behind him. Brant leveled his gun. "Enough games, Ethan. Where's the journal?" "Go to hell. Have it your way." Brant pulled the trigger. Click. Empty. Ethan leveled his shotgun. "Mine ain't empty." He fired. The blast hit the ground inches from Brant's feet, spraying dirt over the deputy. Brant stumbled back, fury twisting his handsome face. "Next one's aimed higher," Ethan bellowed. Brant backed off, seething. "Fall back," he shouted. "Let the fire do the work." His men retreated into the darkness, torches held high. Ethan stood alone in the yard, sweat and soot streaking his skin. The house crackled behind him. He turned toward the cellar door. The flames threw monstrous shadows across the ground. "Girl, whoa!" he yelled. "Come out!" Clara emerged first, hair singed at the edges, eyes blazing with terror and fury. "They'll come back." Ethan wiped blood from his brow. "Then we'll be ready." The wind blew hot and dry across the desert as Ethan Callahan stood in the glow of his burning home, his chest heaving, eyes blazing with fury and pain. Sparks drifted around him, floating into the darkness like dying stars. Blood trickled down the side of his face, mixing with sweat and ash. Ahead of him, Clara urged the wagon forward, her knuckles white on the reins. The girls clung to each other in the back, hair whipping in the wind. Ethan's voice, rough as gravel, reached them as they rattled away. "Ride north. Get to the canyon. Find the cave. I'll come for you," Clara shouted back, her voice trembling. "You can't fight them alone." Ethan didn't answer. He turned away from the wagon and stared into the darkness, where a distant thunder of hoofbeats rolled across the desert like an approaching storm. Dust bloomed on the horizon, glowing orange in the light of the flames behind him, and then they appeared. 25 riders, men silhouetted against the starlit sky. Silas Mercer rode at the front, tall and imposing in a dark suit coated with grit. His pale eyes gleamed like glass as he surveyed the burning ranch. Beside him, Deputy Brant's face twisted with frustration. Mercer's voice sliced the night like a knife. "Where's Callahan?" Brant spat into the dirt. "He's here somewhere. We'll find him." Mercer's cold eyes swept the flaming ruins. "Find him. Kill him if you have to. But bring me those girls." Ethan crouched behind a charred wagon, loading a fresh round into his rifle. His breath came shallow, his shoulders burning with exhaustion. Then he rose and fired. The first shot cracked like lightning, dropping a rider from his horse. Chaos erupted as men shouted and reined in their mounts. Another shot rang out, and another rider toppled into the dust. Brant yelled over the din, "Fan out! Flush him out!" Ethan dove behind a fallen beam as bullets slammed into the wood, splinters stinging his face. He crawled to a new position, popped up, and fired again. A man screamed as a bullet caught him in the thigh. But Mercer's men weren't ordinary rustlers. They regrouped fast, surrounding Ethan's position. Hoofbeats pounded closer. Meanwhile, Clara and the girls thundered up the canyon trail. The walls closed in around them like jaws of stone. Clara's eyes darted left and right, searching the shadows. Behind them, the thunder of pursuit grew louder. Hannah whispered, "They're coming." Clara cracked the reins harder. "Hold on!" Back at the ranch, Ethan felt the circle tightening around him. He could hear men whispering in the dark, shifting positions. Then Mercer's voice boomed out. "Callahan, it's over. Hand over the journal. Give me the girls and maybe you live." Ethan shouted back, voice hoarse, "Come take 'em yourself." Mercer's laugh was ice. "Don't worry, I intend to." Suddenly the men surged forward. Guns barked, flashes lighting the yard. Ethan fired back, but the numbers were too great. A bullet grazed his side, searing pain across his ribs. He staggered, fell to one knee. But when he looked up, there was no fear in his eyes, only a burning resolve. Mercer rode closer, grinning. "You're outnumbered, Callahan. This is business. Nothing personal." Ethan glared up at him. "It's real personal now." He rolled sideways, avoiding a shot from Brant, and fired point blank. Brant screamed as a bullet tore through his shoulder. Mercer's face darkened. "Kill him!" men charged. Ethan fired until his rifle clicked empty. He swung it like a club, cracking a man across the skull. Another tackled him, fists flying. Ethan slammed his elbow into the man's nose, sending blood spraying. He pushed free, gasping, and drew his revolver. 4 shots roared in quick succession. Men dropped around him, but more kept coming. And then from the canyon echoed the sharp crack of gunfire. Ethan's heart leapt. He turned his head and saw torchlight flickering along the ridge above the canyon. Clara and the girls were trapped. He cursed under his breath. He knew what Mercer was doing. Drive the girls into the canyon, then close the trap. He broke into a run, bullets snapping past his ears. His side throbbed with agony, blood soaking his shirt. Every step jarred his wound, but he didn't stop. In the canyon, Clara had pulled the wagon sideways, using it as cover. She crouched behind the wheel, firing a revolver she must have taken off one of Mercer's men. Sparks flashed from her shots. Emily huddled behind a rock, crying silently, her teddy bear clutched tight. Mercer's riders were closing in from both sides of the canyon walls, guns glinting in the firelight. Ethan crashed down the slope, roaring like a beast. He fired 2 shots before he even hit the bottom. A man spun away, clutching his chest. Another dove for cover. Clara saw him and screamed, "Ethan!" He rolled behind a boulder beside her, panting. "Good job holding them off," he rasped. Clara's hands shook as she reloaded. "There's too many." Ethan squinted through the smoke. "Maybe, but I'm still breathing." Mercer appeared at the canyon entrance, mounted high above. His silhouette loomed like a demon against the stars. His voice rolled down the walls. "Callahan, throw down your guns, or the girls die." Clara gripped Ethan's arm. "We can't win this." Ethan touched her shoulder gently. "I ain't here to win. I'm here to make sure y'all get out." He drew in a slow breath. Then he pointed toward the jagged rocks lining the canyon wall overhead. "I need a distraction." Clara's eyes widened as she understood. She raised her pistol and began firing at Mercer's men, drawing their attention. Ethan lined up his revolver. He took 1 heartbeat, 2, and fired into the rocks above Mercer's forces. With a rumble like thunder, tons of stone broke loose. An avalanche poured down, burying 6 of Mercer's gunmen beneath a cloud of dust and debris. Screams echoed off the canyon walls. Mercer's horse reared, throwing him hard into the dirt. Ethan grabbed Clara's arm. "Go! Now!" She grabbed Emily, shouting for the others to follow. The girls scrambled after her, weaving through chaos and dust. Ethan fired his last bullet at a man trying to chase them, dropping him flat. He turned to see Mercer staggering to his feet, rage twisting his face. Callahan, Mercer bellowed. I'm going to bury you myself. Ethan squared his shoulders, blood streaming down his side. Come on, then, he growled. Let's finish it. And as the dust began to settle, the canyon filled with the distant sound of bugles, sharp and clear, echoing like salvation across the desert night.